Okay, thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Thomas Yoon, for joining me today. I really, really appreciate it. I know your time is limited. I want to get to it. I want to talk about the housing market. We want to talk about where rates are headed, what you see happening in the future, what's going on right now, 2008 crash, unique opportunities recessions bring, advice to real estate agents and investors out there and all that stuff. Before I do all that, I'm really interested to hear about your background. Like, where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? How did you get, I've been in the mortgage business for 24 years, and I love to hear the stories about how people got into this crazy business. It's a tough business, right? So, and I always say that people in the mortgage business are a little touched. We're a little special. So please tell me your background and then how you got into this business.
Okay, well, thank you, Tamara. I got into the business straight out of college. I'm immigrated to the United States when I was 3 years old.
Wow.
So immigrant parents, very similar stories with everyone that has immigrant first generation parents. So I went to UCLA, and like most Korean parents, they wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer if I was capable. So I was brainwashed to think that I was supposed to be a doctor or a lawyer. So
So
graduated.
comedian Joe Coy's been saying about the different Asian parents, about how they pretty much predetermine what their kids are going to be. So you're saying that you're living proof of that. That's hilarious. Go on. I'm sorry. That's what I thought of when you said that.
Really true. So I thought I was going to be a lawyer. So I graduated college and I had a gap, and I was supposed to study for my LSAT exams, and that's what I was doing. And I bumped into a random high school friend of mine that was in the mortgage business. And
What year was this?
I want to say it was 2000, 2001, somewhere within that time frame.
Okay.
And back end of 2000, I think. So I think I started really in 2001. And took it as a summer job. I was a consumer direct loan officer, and that's how I cut myself into the business. And the rest is history. I've never left. I've been in the industry that entire time. Started from the ground up as a loan originator, and worked my way up in the course of my career.
That's awesome. So you've been through like the crash of 2008 and all that stuff. So everyone's asking that question, right? Everyone's freaking out right now. Are we headed for a repeat of 2008? I mean, how does the current housing market differ from the market leading up to that crash in 2008? What's your opinion on that?
Oh, I think it differs dramatically. It's easy now because we live in a quick-paced social media newsfeed environment. So, we're looking at headlines, right? And even in our own industry, our own people in our industry are quick to see headlines from, a feed through Twitter or a feed through Instagram or whatnot, and assume and make these really big assumptions. But from a technical standpoint, very, very different between the crash in '08 and what we're currently going through now. The crash in '08 was legitimately a real estate bubble.
Right.
And it was us being unregulated and creating all these exotic subprime loan products that ultimately crashed the housing market. So, we've made some dramatic pivots within our industry. We have the ability to repay, the ATR. We have Dodd-Frank. And so a lot of those.
We remember when we used to do, people don't remember, we used to do stated income with a 620 middle score up to 100% financing up to $1 million. I mean, those are the loan products that really attributed, or a large part of it, right, to that crash in 2008. Remember those good old days? Sign here, press hard.
If you really think hard about it, I mean, these are only for mortgage heads to know, but think about 2006, 7. We were doing closed-end seconds, 100% financing, balloon second payment. It was a different era, a different time. So if you compare it to that and where we are now, it's completely different. We are not in a housing bubble, although many people think that we may be going into one. That is not necessarily true. Lending practices of today is a lot more prudent than what it was during the subprime days.
And you know what, another fact, that, not to interrupt you, but another fact, and I think that attributed, and then I want to get your take on it, I think you will agree. They said there's $122 million worth of inventory today versus $4 million of inventory in 2007. And they also said the average equity right now, the average equity across the board is 58% now, opposed to 19% equity in 2008. Would you agree that that also is definitely contributing factor to this not being like 2008?
For sure. If you think about it from a very practical standpoint, take away all the academic and data piece.
Right.
If you are a homeowner today and you literally didn't buy a home a couple of months ago, right? But if you're a homeowner, you're likely sitting on a substantial amount of equity, right? So in the event that there was, a life-changing scenario that happens, you got laid off at work or whatnot, you're not going to short sell the property, right? The last thing you, if you're in a real financial crisis, is not make your car payment, not make your credit card payment, but you're going to pay where you live and where your family lives. And in the very worst case scenario, if you are presented where you need to liquidate your home, you would sell the home because there's equity inside that home. So very, very different model than what it was when the loans started spinning off in really 06, 07. People were underwater $100,000, $200,000. It made no sense to do anything else but to short sell or foreclose, right?
Right.
We are not in that market.
Right. But what can we learn from what we saw? Like I always said, people say, if I knew now what I knew, if I knew then what I know now. I've been interviewing a lot of different people with high net worth, right? And so in hindsight, in 2020, in your opinion, not that you're a financial advisor, what did we learn from 2008 that we can help apply to the where the housing market is now, where we're headed?
A lot of it is just big picture perspective. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway. All things, especially in real estate, it's a very cyclical industry. We have our ups, our downs. We always have our cycle turns, and we're in one right now. It's pretty dramatic, as everyone could attest to that's in the industry. But, the perspective I have is one of 2 or 3 points. First is this too shall pass, right? As this is, if we're looking at the macroeconomics of your career, this is just one step of many steps, right? It happens to be a step down, but it's just one step, right? And so we know that the cycle will eventually turn the other way. So if you have big picture perspective on that, then you know that it's not the end of mortgage lending or end of housing, right? This is a tough period in our cycle. But when I look at it from my perspective, is tremendous opportunity. Right.
We're getting into that too, because I want to drill down on all these points so that we can really give people some golden nuggets, and some takeaways. And right now everyone's like, are we in a recession? Oh, yeah, I guess so. We can call it that. So with that said, what does a recession typically do to the rates in the mortgage business?
Let me answer that in 2 parts.
Okay, perfect.
As it relates to the mortgage industry and the real estate housing industry, we've been in a recession since May or June of this year.
Okay.
Usually when a recession happens within our country, real estate is one of the first to go into a recession because we're not technically in a recession as a country. I could beg to differ. I think we actually are. The data is lagging and hasn't shown itself for us. Mortgage, we've been in a recession since May or June of this year, right? So one of the reasons why so many of the people in our industry really feels the effect of what's happening in the market. So to answer that question in a 2-part question is, A, we are in a recession in the mortgage industry. In the housing industry, we are actively in a recession and we're feeling the pains of that. Typically what happens historically in a recession in our industry is when the country goes into a greater recession, one of the 2, Fed mandates that they have is obviously, okay, we're in a recession now, we have to curb this, is usually affects the Fed funds rate, which doesn't have a direct correlation to mortgage-backed securities, but ultimately what it will end up doing is the Feds are going to be, one of the only levers they have at that point is to lower the Fed funds rate or steady it out. And usually when the country goes into a recession, interest rates should follow suit and start to drop. And we will also be the first sector of the economy to come out of the recession would be the housing industry.
I have another question for you because, like I said, I've been doing a lot of research, obviously, on this subject prior to the event. And I've talked to some different people. They're talking about, unemployment, obviously numbers have been coming out or whatnot, but in our industry, in the mortgage industry, in tech, and there's been a lot of layoffs. So, and I don't know if those numbers have really trickled down yet, to give us the reality of those things. But the people I've been talking to anticipate unemployment rising considerably. Now, with that said, if that does happen, what do you think that's going to do to rates in the housing market moving forward?
So unemployment in the greater economy or unemployment in our industry? Which
in the greater economy.
Yeah. Well, I think I could only speak as it relates to my industry, right? Okay. So obviously we've taken a dramatic downsizing or a right sizing within our industry. And if you look at Mortgage Bankers Association's forecasting for 2023, to give you an example, in 2021, I think we did a little over 4 trillion in originations in our industry. We're expected to do, somewhere between 1.4 to 1.7 trillion. Mm-hmm. That is accurate. Even with the right sizing and downsizing we've done in our industry, there's still more to go. So, unfortunately, there's going to be more unemployment within our industry coming in the next quarter and a half, in my opinion. So we're not fully out of the woods, so to speak. It's a long winter for our industry in terms of us being able to right size in relationship to what the production is going to warrant the following year. In terms of the greater economy, obviously, if people are losing jobs, that's not a good thing, right? Because if people are losing jobs and scale that you're not thinking about, buying a home, or you might be thinking about refinancing a home, but if you're losing jobs, you can't even qualify for refinancing a home. So I think a great opportunity for our industry to be really the point of knowledge and point of contact, going back to our database and actively talking to all of our borrowers and making sure that they know all their options, and if there's opportunities for our loan officers and our real estate agents to be an advice, a counsel to our borrowers.
Oh, that's awesome advice. Thank you. And what are you hearing is the level that you're at? What are you hearing as to when they think the bottom will be in the housing market? I've read all kinds of news breaks and all kinds of stuff, and you have Forbes coming out there saying, oh, this certain month and this certain year, that's when the prices will drop considerably, and that's where people are waiting to kind of pounce to pick up those opportunities. But have you heard anything?
Yeah, I mean, I hear everything that everyone else does, and obviously, I'm a student of our industry, so I'm constantly reading and learning, talking to my counterparties. The prevailing thought is that the Feds have another 75 basis points to 1.25 left to raise in their Fed funds rate. Powell has indicated that once they hit that marker, they're likely going to hold suit. So, and then wait to see whether or not we're actively in a greater recession within our economy. And if that happens, then he's going to pull the lever. And everyone's expecting that to, real rates to rebound by sometime first quarter or the back end of first quarter. That's everyone, most people's prediction. Me sitting where I'm at in my company, I don't really kind of go off of speculative thoughts of what I think the economy is going to do. Where I look at it more so as I'm always going to prepare for the worst, expect the best. So we're preparing for a long winter where it might be second or third quarter of next year, where housing really starts to rebound. If it happens earlier, great. That's a great surprise and a great gift for all of us in the industry. But if you ask most real estate economists, they're thinking the first quarter of next year.
So I think you would agree, and that's what what we're putting out there. That, and we'll get into this deeper. But do you agree with the statement that recessions and economic downturns of this type bring unique opportunities to build wealth?
Absolutely. If you look at most of the Fortune 100 companies in NASDAQ right now, a lot of them came out during they were born in the midst of a recession cycle. Amazon, to name one of of many, many, right? Apple, right? And it goes on and on and on. So usually in a recession, honestly, real things are birthed in times of crisis, right? And that
Mhm.
also includes individuals. But as a company, as a salesperson, these times are actually the best times if you're able to shift away your emotions about it and
And
you're
we'll
able
get
to
into mindset.
look at what's in front of you. There's tremendous opportunity within our industry and within the greater economy if you position yourself properly.
Right. And that's why I even started the TAM talks, because knowledge is power, right? And there's anxieties are high right now. So that's why I figure we can bring this information, to real estate investors, the average person or whatnot, it'll lower those anxieties. So thank you for your time today. So we went over 2008 guidelines and lending restrictions tightened immensely, right? Which was painful in the beginning. That's helped us now. Do you think that this will prevent seeing as many foreclosures, or are we still, people are like, do you think that there's still going to be, I hear people saying this all the time, I'm going to wait for a foreclosure. Do you anticipate us seeing a lot of foreclosures like we did back in 2008?
No, nothing like that. I mean, even if you have to really study the data, but if you even look at the foreclosure data right now, someone could take a headline and say, hey, foreclosures jumped 400% in the month of November.
Right.
That could be true, but it's off of historical lows, right?
Right.
That's
Mhm.
not
It's all relative.
it's not an accurate statement of really what's going on in the housing industry. Don't get me wrong. I think if you're a late cycle buyer and you bought as a first time home buyer with, no down payment or very, very low down payment, um, late cycle buyers in this market, depending on, and it's regionalized in my opinion, it's not like, a national issues, but, I'll take, for example, if you bought uh, first time homebuyer program out in Idaho, late cycle turn, yeah, you might be underwater, right? But if you look at the greater economy and the greater housing market, they're pockets, but the general housing market is super stable, and I don't really see that being a systemic problem for us.
I see. Okay, I have another one. We've seen rental prices increase significantly, right? What's causing that? And do you see that continuing? The cost of rent?
Cost of rent, unfortunately, I think, actually we'll start to see a stabilization of rent control. We're actually seeing it now.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, I think there's, every economic cycle has its own unique twist to it. The bigger problem we have right now, if we really think about housing, and, first of all, housing appreciation shot up so quickly that, the average first-time home buyer, they're living in the greater metropolitan areas, can't afford a home
Right.
unless they have
The
a,
affordability factors just.
yeah, it's through the roof, right? And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, one of the problems that we've had in terms of our inflation, right? We can kind
Right.
of dive deep into that in a different topic, but housing, the problem we have right now is we have the largest demographic patch in US history, right? The millennials. And they are all in the prime ages of potentially buying a home right now. But the equity appreciation of homes in the greater parts, metropolitan areas of our cities in our country have skyrocketed where they can't afford a home. So you have a gluttony of housing issues where they need to live, obviously, right? So
Mm-hmm.
rent will be, it's going to be a challenge, right? It will continue to be a challenge. And since '08, one of the big mistakes that we've made as a housing industry is we didn't build enough homes.
Right.
There is a lack of surplus, right? So
Mm-hmm.
supply and demand chain is out of whack within our industry. So that's obviously greatly affecting how rent prices are being controlled, right? There's just a high demand on that side of the business.
I mean, that's the good news is for investors, for as far as mortgage lenders, right? We're more, I mean, we have people that can now qualify because the rents are so high, right? So there's that issue, but then I want to get people that, to get on board so that they can take advantage of, these these benefits of what this recession is going to bring. So the common thing I'm hearing among real estate moguls and multi-million-dollar investors is to leverage all you can in order to diversify. I keep hearing the word, like they all say powder, right? Like have cash, the cash so you can take advantage of what's going to be coming. Yeah. And so to create passive income and generational wealth. A lot of these guys that I've spoken to said they made the majority of their money in the crash of 2008 and 9. Now, I'm not saying we've already went over that. This is not going to be the bloodbath that 2008 and 9 was. However, it is going to bring some opportunity. So we want to have the bigger picture of that. So, and I know that you know all this, but what unique loan products, and I know because I see you guys coming out here at Accelerate Capital, IQ Mortgage, do you have that offers that can aid in this, help people purchase property, investors, first-time home buyers? Like what kind of products are you focusing on?
So if we relate this in the retail sector, IQ Mortgage was founded upon the product of non-QM loans. Non-QM loans are specifically geared for self-employed borrowers, which if we talk about the 2008 housing crisis, from 2008 till about 2014, self-employed borrowers were effectively shut out of the housing market. They couldn't get financing unless they put amount of down payment. So
I would have my clients calling me, and people would get really mad. They have an 800 credit score. They've got $1.2 million cash in the bank, right, just sitting in a money market account, and they couldn't get loans because they were writing everything off on their taxes, and there were no loan products for people like that. And they used to kick and scream, I could pay cash for this. I mean, how many times as loan officers have we had to calm people down? It's like, it's not about that. It's about, at one point it was just all about your DTI, your debt to income ratio, and it didn't matter. So go ahead and expand on that. But we've had this conversation so many times.
It was the sector of financing that the borrowers were shut out for. If you think about it, 2008 to 2014,
right,
stretch. It also happened to be the more wealthier borrowers,
right?
They had probably a credit blemish. They probably short sold or foreclosed on one of their investment properties, or maybe their primary residence. They knew how to make money. They made money during that time of the cycle. Well,
right.
Usually, if you know how to make money then, you know how to make money now, right? So these same borrowers are now, sitting on tons of cash, reestablished credit, but they can't qualify for what they truly should be able to qualify for, and that is where non-QM really comes into the fold. And you take away the biggest demographic patch in recorded history, the millennials, the second biggest opportunity in mortgage banking for borrowers is the non-QM sector, because it's the untapped sector. And also it is not as hyper competitive, right? If
right.
you talk about the millennial generation, we're talking about every sector of mortgage banking and banking platforms that are all going after the same borrowers. Non-QM borrowers are it's easier to actually tap into, because the competition and the entry point to actually do the program as well is very difficult to do and scale, simply because non-QM is a program that's still very manual in terms of its production line process. It's not what we deem as a conventional financing assembly line. We're not running an automated underwrite like DUNLP and then getting an approval and an underwriter's fact checking that. It is a manual underwrite and has a lot of nuances, so it's hard to kind of run those in scale. What that means for a loan officer, if they have these products available, is it's going to be a lot easier for you to compete and win the business of those borrowers.
Right, and I'm going to get into that, but what is the typical, just before I get that, just as a sidebar, what is the typical max cash out loan to value that you're seeing right now on like owner aux stuff?
So, the industry this year constricted a lot, right? It actually happened across the board. Not only did it affect non-QM, but it also affect conventional agency financing. Fannie and Freddie effectively put loan level price adjustments on second home and investor properties
Oh my God. It was so funny because I've been in loans for 24 years. So when I was pricing out, all of a sudden they did that overlay, right? So then I'm pricing out investment or even second homes. And I was like, holy, I had to call. I didn't believe that what I was seeing. So yeah, go on. I'm sorry.
So, the restriction is happening everywhere in our sector. It's not just limited to non-QM.
Right.
But if you had great credit and if you had, reasonable, good DTI, you could have gone all the way up to 90% LTV, loan to value on cash out owner occupies. Now it's restricted down to about 80%.
Okay.
But we have some new programs rolling out very, very soon that will help alleviate and give more options to our borrowers. That's in the pipeline as we speak right now.
Yeah.
There's opportunities.
Huge. I know. I'm actually going to be interviewing Jerry Fernandez in another day or so, and we're going to go over those. I'm going to get more granular on those products and programs that can help people. These specific products and programs are what going to aid in helping people create that generational wealth and passive income and take advantage of the opportunities that are ahead of us. Do you anticipate lenders lowering those LTVs even further in anticipation of declining home values?
It's super fluid, right? So the answer is everything's at play. If I had the crystal ball and I was able to predict all the things that happened this year,
Come on.
I would
How many times have we been told that to do that? What are rates going to do? Exactly. We're like,
I think what I can say is it's a very volatile market and anything is possible at this point. I think, there's companies like us and a handful of others within our sector, that are going to lead from the front and innovate and create iterations to, alleviate and create more liquidity for our borrowers and our referral partners.
That's awesome. So I want to get into, like I said, I've been dealing with, we're going to be interviewing some really high level real estate people. And I've been going to different events and whatnot. And there's been a common thing. They're saying people are not thinking macro enough. Okay. People have been so used to rates. I mean, when I first started in the business 24 years ago, and I always did my business belly to belly. So I'd go to people's houses after they got off work, right? And I take the loan application, hand by hand and all that. And now you can't even get borrowers to come inside their, into your office, right? They're like too busy or whatnot. But I was selling mortgages at 9%. People were happy about it. They were like, thank you. Can I have another? So then people got so used to seeing 4% and 3% rates that now they're freaking out. And then you have to really think more macro and avoid reading all the headlines too, because we're told this is why I'm also doing this show. We're not taught this stuff in school, right? So people are go put, this amount of money into your 401k and your IRA and get the lowest interest rate that you can and pay off your house. And that's all, that's all good information and true. But if you want to create generational wealth, there's something called good debt and there's bad debt, right? So, and these people are freaking out now with the rates being 6, 7, even at some point, sometimes 8%, to say that, these people say that I've been talking to that they never let higher rates deter them ever. Because the opportunities, it's all relative. So if you do a shorter term fix right now and you pull some cash out because you have the equity, so now you have the money where you can diversify. And I'm going to have some other people that I've been talking to that tell people where they can put that money to get a higher rate of return. And then they can use that money to invest. And also the gains they get are tax free. So we're going to talk about that too. But these higher level people say that if you take advantage and if you do your due diligence on these properties that you're going to be able to pick up. He said, you got a 25% ROI, I mean, return on your investment. He goes, it doesn't matter if the rate's 7, 8, or 9. It's cost of doing business. You refinance it later. So do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think, if I have to simplify it for, non-mortgage or real estate or finance people is don't think about the debt so much. Think about it's cost of shelter, right? So buying an owner-occupied home, and it's not necessarily about what the rate is what are you willing and capable of paying to live in that, right? So, I mean, the higher interest rate is not good because it's a higher payment. You may qualify for less. Of course, that's just mathematical formula. However, you look at the flip side of that is you no longer have the hyper out of control housing market listing issues that we've had all throughout 2020 and 21. You're going to be able to likely get into a property a little bit more easier than it was last year. You're not going to have a crazy bidding war. You won't have to sign off on all your contingencies. You may even be able to have the seller help you do some financing to do a 2-1 buy down, potentially help you do your closing costs. So there's opportunities there. And Tamara, you mentioned interest rates. Looking at the macro, it's actually very true. I did a PowerPoint presentation to all my managers earlier this year, and don't quote me on the exact interest rates, but I took the interest rate, 30-year conforming interest rate from right after the Great Depression till today. I mean, and the interest rate, one thing is consistent. It goes like this.
Right.
We had in the 1980s, we had rates as high as 14, 15%. In 1990s, we had rates in the 7s. We had rates in the 5s. We had rates in the 4s, and so forth and so forth. It's just that, everyone is a prisoner of the current time. So everyone's under the notion that you're supposed to get a 2.5% 30-year conforming fixed rate, right? That happened once in a lifetime potentially. But if you're able to just look at it for cost of shelter and then get yourself in a home, equity appreciation, the opposite is true if you look at the historical equity appreciation of homes in the United States. Interest rates are like a roller coaster. It goes like this. If you look at equity appreciation of homes from the time of the Great Depression till now, current time, it is a consistent, steady way up. You'll never lose money in the long run if you buy real estate, right? And that's a foregone conclusion. You might have cycles where it dips a little bit, but if you look at the historical track of equity appreciation, it's always going up. So, it's the quickest way to build wealth. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, I just spoke to Dan Young, who is the founder for Ugly Unicorn Crypto Hedge Fund, in addition to many other things. And he said that all his buddies, because he hangs out with people at a very high level, he said that 95% of their wealth or 90% of their wealth has been made with real estate. And I think right now, knowledge, like I said again, knowledge is power. So we need to be studying this stuff. And he said, look at opportunity zones, for example, get creative. There's opportunity zones where he said, if you go into these opportunity zones, they have a map actually, he said, to help bring more business into certain areas. He said, in 10 years, when you sell that property, there's no capital gains. And he said a lot of these people that are super wealthy have made the majority of their wealth in real estate. So I think you're right. He said, if you can, right now, he said, take advantage of what this market's gonna do, because you're gonna be able to create that passive income and generational wealth. I think you would agree. What advice would you give right now to loan officers and real estate agents in this current market? I'm saying educate yourself, but what would you say? I mean, give us a tidbit there.
Well, it's all the same kin, but I look at it probably in a couple of points. We've been talking about big picture perspective. I think that's absolutely true, but really it's a tremendous opportunity, right? So whether you're a loan officer or a real estate agent, whether you're a C-suite, whether you're a mid-tier manager, whatever it may be, in any realm of position in the marketplace, it is a tremendous opportunity in our sector, because really what's happening is survival of attrition, right? So, as I mentioned to you earlier in our talk, that we're not done right sizing our industry. Well, all the guys and girls that remain have an opportunity to take a much bigger market share. So when the market stabilizes and when the cycle turns the other way, you should be positioned to really dominate. When you talk about how a lot of the wealthy people made their money after the downturn of 08, it's absolutely true, right? It's the foundations that were laid in that time is what made all the millionaires and billionaires and and so forth, right? So the same is true for this cycle now. When I look at it from where I'm sitting and looking at it as a company, is tremendous opportunity to really arm ourselves and become. I have a 12-year-old son, and I'm always trying to teach him things, and so I have to say things in a way where a 12-year-old boy will understand. And
Right.
the way I explained it to him is, who you are right now is not what you will be when you're 18, 21, 31, 40, 45.
Right.
You,
I've been like 5 different women.
to use a superhero analogy, like you're becoming, right? So
Mhm.
the analogy I used is, right now you're, young Bruce Wayne. But if you remember all the things that you're supposed to do and you're disciplined, because discipline
Discipline.
is probably one of the biggest, distinguishing factors in all this stuff right now, is
Hmm.
forget about how you feel. Don't worry about all the stresses. Those things are going to be there anyways.
Hmm.
But if you are disciplined in your daily habits, because
We're gonna get to that. Yeah.
your daily habits is what really creates a successful life in business, and you will become, right? And when you become, that's when you dominate. So this is the time to actually do all those things. And you'll have less competition to do it. You're going to be in a position of authority. Why? As we come out of the cycle, you're in the cycle. You know the cycle. You could
Right.
explain and lead and advise properly, right? It's very similar to '08. All the guys that stayed and survived in the business in that cycle
Right.
are all the guys that are doing something meaningful. Tomorrow,
Right.
you've been in the industry longer than me. Everyone
Right.
that and then tried to come back, they were too far behind
Hmm. Yeah.
to the realities of the regulatory restrictions, all the timelines, strict timelines that were thrown in, everything in between. It was hard for them to gap back up. They were struggling just to gap up, where people that stayed in the business were able to run, right? And that's what the opportunity presents itself for everyone that's currently in this cycle now, is figure out how you could really develop yourself into doing something more, and you will become who you want to be in 12, 24 months. That will distinguish yourself and put you over the top.
That's good advice. It's funny because I was one time, Angela Duckworth. She did a study, and they went to like Westmount, and they went to like these Fortune 500 companies. They studied Olympic athletes, super high achieving people, right? And they're trying to figure out, and then they were even trying to figure out, like they'd go into sales team and try to figure out which individual would dominate, and they're trying to figure out the correlation to these successful people. And she said, and what they found out was, and they actually have a test for this now. They said it wasn't social status, it wasn't even intelligence, it wasn't good looks. Do you know what it was that differentiated? And I think this is what it is. He said it's grit. Grit. The person that can withstand those cycles, the one with the, for lack of a better term, cojones, right? The ones that you get knocked down, or it's a difficult situation, right? And they forge through. That's what differentiates. And right now, I think discipline is paramount, absolutely paramount. Mindset. Give me some words of advice on mindset and mentors.
I think mentors are extremely important.
Critical.
I have many, many, so many that I can't distinguish which one is more important than the other.
How many do you think? Just
That
give me.
I value probably about 10. Uh,
Okay.
I think I actually have more than that, but I spend enough time with where it matters, right? And that doesn't mean I'm meeting them every week or every month,
Right.
but I do have that too, and I have an executive coach. So mindset is everything, right? And it's
Right.
because the idea is two people can experience the exact same trauma.
Right.
One could look at it as trauma.
Mm-hmm.
The other one could look at it as an opportunity. And
Because
that,
you have victim mindset versus someone that takes action, I think. Don't you think?
um,
You
yeah,
said somebody that looks at it like they were traumatized, the other person looks at it an opportunity? Or what do you attribute that to?
I think everything is happening for you, right? Like, instead of to you, right? So
Okay.
if that's a victim mindset or not, you can make that case. I think, everybody
Words are important, right? Words are important. how
our
we
words,
frame things.
our words to ourselves is the most important, right?
Hmm.
Every day you got to wake up and win the battle with yourself. So, you know, and you have to, kind of reverting back to becoming the whole Batman story I told my son.
Right.
It's actually really true, right? The real takeaway when you're thinking about your mindset is you could neurologically change the way you're thinking and your behaviors, and you can literally become something else, right? And that's anybody that has the discipline and the desire to really kind of do it, right? So you are constantly evolving yourself or not, right? It's one or the
Right.
other. There's no in between. I don't think if you're stagnant, you're losing, right? Because you're losing to someone that's constantly developing, right? And in the open market, that person will win that's constantly developing. That person is a better version of himself 1 month from now, 6 months from now, 12 months from now. But I think a lot of times when we talk about mindset, one of the easiest tells that I get when I'm speaking to salespeople or I'm speaking to managers is how they think of time. I'll give you an
Absolutely.
I'll give you an example. If I'm talking to a salesperson and they're talking about their commission for that week, if I'm talking to someone that's talking about their money in a month, in a year, in a decade, they're very different people. And their assumption of time and how they view the world and their time allocated is very, very different. Shorter horizon that you have, I could tell whether or not how successful you are. Because if you're talking to me about last month's commission, I already know what you're about, right? If you're talking to me about things that you're trying to build out over time, that means that you're talking about very, very different things. So mindset comes from reading, absorbing, but the greatest step up, I think, is you got to surround yourself with people, that old cliche, look at the 5 people you hang out the
I
most and
just,
who you are. That sounds really cliche, but it's actually really true.
but you know what? In times like this, Jays, even in your lifetime, right? Hard, but it's better to have loved and lost, and all those cliches are true though. That's why they're cliches. That's why, and you're absolutely right. Right now, I think it's like we said, the ones with the chutzpah, the one with the grit, the one with the systems in place, time blocking, using your time wisely. I even wrote a manual on time blocking. And I used to bucket when I was first started in the business. I'm like, oh, I don't want, routine, is just boring. And no, routine sets you free, people. Routine sets you free. And I bucked it for so long. And then I saw people, or I was really good at what I did. I'm like, I'm a really good loan. I'm a really good communicator. I'm out there, I'm doing these things. Why are people that aren't as talented as I am and not even as, I'm like, they're not even as kind as, they don't even care as much as me. Why are they kicking my butt in numbers? Because they had systems in place that I didn't, and I wasn't time blocking myself. So I remember it kind of was a turnaround, because I remember one of my managers at the time, Sam Ellsworth, he goes, and I was, producing pretty high. He goes, I question your work ethic. And I said, my work ethic? I was running around doing stuff all the time. And what I learned was, because when he said that to me, and then I started getting upset that people were, surpassing my numbers. I went and got myself a coach, and I was paying like $2,700 a month for this coach. And what they taught me, and then my income level like doubled within the first year of that coaching, and then so on and so forth. And I attributed that to the discipline, right? Disciplining myself, putting those systems in place, putting those routines in place. And that's what really set me free. It truly did. It really, really set me free. And I think that that's what people need to be doing right now.
Yeah,
And that's what you're talking about.
your allocation of time is really important. And if you're really trying to get to a level beyond yourself, it's how you are able to manipulate time. It's levering of time, right?
Most
So,
valuable commodity, right?
the guys that can do things in scale, their output is 10 times more than the other person. So they're able to do 10 times more things than the person that's doing that thing, right? So, guys that have struggle achieving kind of big goals is all relative, of course, is they always look at time as lacking, where, if people are able to lever their time, they're looking at time as an opportunity and
Right.
separate things. And that's a mindset shift, right?
Mm-hmm.
a lot. I mean, I'm not trying to do a coaching session here, but
Well, it's important. I kind of am, to be quite frank, because I know we identified what's going on in the market. We're telling people, hey, don't look at this more macro. Don't be so fixated on the interest rate, right? So all that stuff. But you have to knowledge, right? Educate yourself, get your mind on straight, see the bigger picture. This is all part of it. And I think all the information that you and I've discussed thus far is very, very important. But what we're talking about right now is equally important. It really truly is, and from my experience.
Mindset. If you don't have mentors, seek them. If you can't have it, read a lot. Look, what you feed in your mind and what you daydream about becomes a reality.
Right.
I think a lot of a simple thing you can do, and I do this all the time, by the way, is I daydream about all the things I'm trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so in my mind, it's like playing out in real time all the time. It's almost like a little kid that wants to go to Disneyland but hasn't gone yet, and is
Right.
thinking about what it would feel like to be in Disneyland and riding that ride and eating this cotton candy and getting the ears and whatever it may be. The more you daydream about it, the more it becomes your brain starts to open up and think about all the things it can and should do.
Right.
Uh, if you're focused on all the negatives, that's what you will become too. You will start to have a negative outlook on things. The reason why you need to surround yourself with like-minded people, you need to surround yourself with people you want to be like, right?
Right.
That's the difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would prefer to be the dumbest guy in the room, in every room I walk into, and I don't
Absolutely.
want to be the smartest man in the room, right? And
Uh-huh.
that's a philosophy that I held on to very early in my career. Is I was able to self-assess myself pretty honestly and looked at my strengths and weaknesses and built around that, right? And I was um, aware enough to recognize all the plugs I needed to do, and that thought process and executing those things have stayed with me throughout my entire career. So you want to get the right mindset, find the people around you that think in an elevated way of things that you're trying to replicate. And it's the quickest way to gap up on how you want to think and how you want to move in times of crisis.
Thanks. That's so important. Okay, I'm gonna ask you just a couple. We're gonna do some rapid fire at the end. I'm gonna ask you some questions about your routines. I really want you to be detailed in it. But I did have some people that sent in some questions, and so I want to make sure that I asked you those. So Dusty asked, are there any opportunities for growth or innovation in the mortgage industry in the current market?
Yes. One of probably two or three ways. One, as it relates to us at IQ Mortgage, is that non-QM is the only sector that's it's not backed by the conservatory of the government. It's not a Fannie, Freddie, Jenny product. It's an open market product. So what that means is it's the one sector where innovation is prevalent, right? So there is opportunities for non-QM to continue to iterate and be, a voice of solution in the going forward years, in the next 2 to 3 years. So I think that's true. I think one way the industry will innovate is through fintech. Fintech in the next 5 to 7 years, I think, is going to be a dramatic game changer within the mortgage industry and even in the real estate industry. But I could speak in my silo in mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
It will be a game changer in the next 5 to 7 years. And every year that goes along, there will be really big leaps and bounds of fintech integration that's coming down the pike.
Listen, people, this is all good stuff. Okay, Tyrone asked, what role do you see the mortgage industry playing in supporting the overall economic recovery?
Well, the finance industry, the mortgage real estate industry is one of the biggest GDP movers, right? So
Right.
the economy goes. And as I mentioned earlier in our talk, whenever there's a recession that happens, our industry is first to go, but we're also the first to move out. So as the Fed funds rate starts to drop once recession is officially announced, it will spur the housing market, it will spur the mortgage industry, and we will be one of the leading sectors to push us out of a recession.
What is going to have to happen? Like what different indicators are going to have to happen that will start to push the rates back down?
Well, I think uh, Fed Chair Powell has specifically mentioned this in multiple meetings, but he wants unemployment to increase, right? Basically what happened is, let's be honest, right? Frank talk is we printed more stimulus money in the
Ridiculous.
last 2 years than we have in the history of our company of our country.
I know. In the 3 months when COVID, I don't have those exact facts right in front of me, but I did the studying on it. Within 3 months, we added $3 trillion in debt that took us prior to that. I think it took us 8 years to add 3 trillion. And within 3 months, we added $3 trillion of debt. It's
So
that's scary stuff.
yeah, I mean, so you look, it's yeah, like in some levels it's unprecedented times, right? We've never
Right.
had a pandemic like this in modern times. We've never printed money the way we did. So there's a lot of factors involved in all this stuff.
Okay, Dan wants to know what steps can individuals take to protect themselves and their investments in the current market?
That's probably not a question I can answer with great expertise. I'm not a financial planner. I think from a practical standpoint, be smart, right? Be frugal about your money you're spending right now. If you think you wanted to buy that watch or that car and it was more of a want and not a need, I would advise you not to buy it, right? Hunker down, be
Cut the fat.
that's right. Be conservative. Hold on to your cash savings, and let's hope that this is a light recession.
When you put your ego in check, that's a big thing, I think. And the millionaires that I was talking to, I asked them that same question. They said, cut the fat. He goes, nobody cares if you have a Hermes bag. Nobody cares what watch you have. It doesn't matter. Right. So stop with that crap, and he said, and take a vacation. He goes, you'd be better off keeping that 10 grand you right now so that you can take advantage of opportunities than going on a vacation. I see a lot with real estate agents when I was coaching them. They get a commission check. And the first thing they would do, all of a sudden I'd see them. They were all stressed out, making sure, Tamara, make sure this deal closes. I'm on my last dollar. And then, I would get the loan done for them. And so then all of a sudden I'd be on Instagram. And they're like on a cruise and they're like the Eiffel Tower behind them. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? So I think like go take a vacation in the backyard, put your egos in check, like stay really centered and grounded. Don't get too emotional about everything. Because like I said, in the end, everything always works out, right? We'll be all right. All right, rapid fire questions, and we're going to wrap this up. So what time do you get up in the morning, sir?
6:30.
6:30. Why do you get up at 6:30? What's your morning routine typically? Like literally, like I want to know, like, okay, my alarm goes off at 6:30 and then I do what? Tell me what your morning routine is.
6:30, I wake up. I try to drink a whole cup of water. I walk my dog. It's a time of meditation or thinking. I'm thinking through the day of all the things I know I need to get done. I come back. I do a brisk workout, less than 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
My first cup of coffee. I don't look at any of my emails or pick up my phone during that time. So I want to completely detach the first hour of my day where I'm just kind of focused on me and I can kind of hone in. And then during my coffee, as I'm drinking my coffee, then I'll start to look at my daily agenda and off to the races I go.
Do you eat breakfast? What did you eat for breakfast this morning?
I ate oatmeal.
Okay, oatmeal. Funny, I'm asking everyone that question.
I'm eating oatmeal now. I was told my cholesterol is getting pretty high. I'm a little older now, so my wife is forcing me to eat oatmeal.
It can be pretty good, man. It can be pretty good. Don't be knocking oatmeal. So, but it is important diet right now, like entrepreneurial minded people, right? Commission, like to get yourselves with the anxiety levels to lower, stop eating processed sugar, like really watch your diet, your exercise. I think you would agree, right? So, because that's what's going to help. I mean, how do you keep positive in trying times like this? I mean, we are going to be headed into some trying times, right? So how do you keep positive?
You know, I always think big picture, mainly because I'm driving the ship, right? So I have
Right.
to anticipate what I think is happening. And I think for me, I could only speak on my behalf. There's three things that I do pretty consistently. I'm not a devout religious person, but I do believe.
I
So
do.
I have my faith to lean on.
Mhm.
Second is, I create me time. So, the morning ritual is a me time. It's, it's not always filled just with meditation. It could be an audible book that I'm listening to while I'm walking my dog, but
Right.
it's time for me to reflect, for me to kind of gain myself. And the third thing is I make an active point to have time for myself to do the things I need. I don't think that that's talked about enough. The example I give is, there's a time for work, there's a time for family, there's a time to learn, and actually, believe it or not, there's a time to decompress, right?
Right.
I'm not decompressed, and I know I'm gonna eventually take that out into the masses and to my family and to my employees, and I'm not the better version of myself. So I make sure that I allocate time where I have it to myself, whether that's me playing golf, whether that's me in my office just reading for an hour and no one's talking to me and I'm on my own, whether it's
Mhm.
a walk or a hike or whether it's a workout. Everyone has what they do to make sure they do that, but I'm
Mhm.
very aware of that in times of crisis that I need that time for myself.
Even more so. Right. Right. Thank you for that. Okay. You had mentioned you have a dog. Well, how many pets do you have? What kind of dog? It's a very, very difficult question. It's our last one. But what kind of dog do you have and what's he or she's name?
So my dog is an English Staffordshire Bull Terrier.
Yeah.
Pretty rare. Everyone thinks it's a baby pit bull, but
Uh-huh.
it's not. He's 4 years old. His name is Taxi. Uh,
Taxi? Why?
my son named him because every time you call the dog will run up like a taxi.
That is hilarious.
Named it when my kid's 12. I think he named him when he was 7 or 8. Um, so his name is Tax. He's a good dog, but of course, I'm the one taking care of him, and I do all the walks and do all the dog dad stuff.
Oh, the dog dad stuff. That's awesome. Thomas Yoon, thank you so, so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tamara.
All right. Bye.
Bye.